Hey there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shirin.
And we are in the middle of our coverage of banned books for the month of June. And what that means right now is that so Shirin was pulling up a whole bunch of information from the American Library Association, and we got to looking and chatting and thought it might be good for us to touch on maybe like the top 10 banned books or most challenged books, we should say, according to the ALA's data from 2024. So more recently, essentially, we've got kind of information about some of that. You know, we can talk about a few of those titles and, you know, why maybe we think a lot of that challenging is happening. And, you know, I have a couple of little numbers here and there for maybe in the Canadian side of things as well, because we also we do like to think that we don't do anything like that and there's no censorship in Canada, but unfortunately there is. Unfortunately, that's not the case, you know, and it doesn't mean we're not trying a little bit harder, but also unfortunately that is still something that you see here. So
yeah,
right. So
before we get into it, Megan, what's on your nightstand?
I think my most recent probably would be The Housemaid by Frida McFadden for me to kind of, that I've just like finished and stuff recently. So like this week, basically, I'd finished. That's it. Before, it was the exact same thing as what Shirin had done, because I read The Boyfriend like, I don't know, early in the year or something, maybe in like February of this year, and it was like, you know, like a fun kind of ride, and I was like, okay, cool. And then Shirin had done that and then read The Housemaid immediately after, the way that she does when she becomes obsessed with one particular author's work after she reads one thing. Would I do that? Yeah. She was like, read The Housemaid. So I did. And yeah, it was, I think I said this before, but like, I have no idea what to expect from sequels to this, because there are like 3 books and like some.
And you said there's like a novella.
It's like a Christmas episode. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this going to be? Like, I don't even understand what it's going to be. So, you know, obviously it was fun. I can definitely see why it's probably one of the big thrillers of the last few years that has like kind of blown up and has gotten really popular.
Plus they're making a movie, which doesn't hurt.
Exactly. No, but I think that's how we've gotten to this point with it, you know, because it's just one of those like fun, quick, like you're really into it and you're kind of like, what the hell is going on here? And that's just what thrillers do. So I think that's also part of the reason that you read them so quickly.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. What about you?
I actually just finished Sunrise on the Reaping.
Oh, right.
So the most recent Hunger Games novel. I'm not a diehard Hunger Games fan.
No. I don't think either of us are, so. I
enjoy the movies well enough. I attempted to read the Hunger Games, like the original trilogy. Yeah. And I think I just wasn't captivated by the writing style. So I kind of, you know, DNF'd it, and also I'd watched the movies and stuff, so I was kind of like, and I felt that the books followed the movies quite closely, but not exactly.
Yeah.
I really liked a Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, just because I really enjoyed the President Snow aspect of it. Okay. But this one was fine. It was like, you know, okay, they're back in the Hunger Games, like it's Haymitch. It felt very similar to Katniss's story, you know, he was chosen, not really, like he kind of got stuck into it. He has a younger brother, Ma. They're very poor.
Yeah, exactly.
He's trying to take care of them, and then he kind of gets into the whole rebel, you know, plot to overthrow. And President Snow is a horrible, horrible person still. Yes. So
which we already
knew, you know. So like it was fine. Like I think if the movie was already out, I don't think I would have bothered to finish reading it.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I can see that, because you've been like, well, I'm going to get the same experience out of just watching this.
Yeah. So yeah, but I did finish it. It was fine. I guess the movie's coming out next year.
Yeah, yes, I think it's slated for 2026 was my understanding.
And
so
they're casting, like right now they're announcing all the cast and stuff. So that was interesting to see the cast choices as I was reading the book. Yeah, they were just announcing it at the same time.
Names to faces. Yeah, and you're like, oh wow, okay.
I'm like, oh yeah, that fits.
Yeah.
Any Hoosers, that's me.
Okay. Okay, so shall we talk about this a little bit? So I know that in previous episodes, we've mentioned the American Library Association, and that's one of the major associations that deals with these books that are being challenged, particularly from what I understand anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, from the perspective of like school districts and and like, you know, within
Public
libraries and public libraries and educational institutions and things like that, from that side of things.
I believe so, and they also compile a lot of data on the topic, and they release reports every year about their top 10 most challenged books of that year, and then some of the statistics, and then some of the explanations as to why.
Yeah, what the challenge is, essentially.
Yeah, and there's like also a lot of information on here about like what is censorship and why is it important to be aware of it. And like, why are libraries important? That's also become a topic that they've had to broach, unfortunately, with, you know, defunding all these government, you know, federal government bodies in the U.S.
And we did see the Librarian of Congress more recently stripped of their title as well, or laid off, whatever you want to call it. So, you know, so we're seeing this at like a very high level, which is very, very unfortunate and very sad to see. And
very
so, of
worrisome.
course,
it's very Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, so I imagine that the ALA is dealing with a lot of volume in that capacity right now.
Yeah, and they've got, like, you know, I was reading their report and I was thinking about it. They've got a really interesting job, right? Because they have to kind of toe the line between, you know, putting out factually correct information and also providing like education and, you know, spreading the word on the importance of certain things without being abrasive towards the administration. Because they also don't want to be kind of labeled like some sort of anarchist group or something. You know what I mean?
No, it's like, true. You don't want to be labeled some sort of like rebellion.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, so they have a very interesting job that they have to do here. And I was reading their report and I'm like, they do a good job of like writing things that are factually correct, where they're like, hey, like, you know, in 2024, I think there was like something like 4,000 titles that were challenged or something.
Oh my god.
Hang on, where is it?
That's crazy.
And so, like, yeah, here, the majority of library censorship can be tied to organized campaigns, pressure groups, and the administration, board members, and elected officials they influence targeted 4,190 total titles in 2024.
And that's only in 1 year.
From 2001 to 2020, this constituency attempted to remove an average of 46 titles per year. And they've got this interesting stat, like it's like a little graphic where they show percentage of total titles targeted by pressure groups and decision makers 2001 to 2024. In 2005, it was only 6%. In 2024, it was 72%.
My God.
So it's crazy, like, you know, and they're explaining like where the challenges are taking place.
Yeah.
Who challenges books, and they're saying 72% of censorship attempts were initiated by pressure groups and decision makers who have been swayed by them.
Wow.
Like only 16% were parents.
Like parents, actually.
And like that goes back to our other discussion where we were talking about Water for Elephants, and we were saying like, you know, the ALA has explicitly said, you know, it really should only be a parent who can say what their child you know, reads or doesn't read, you know. And so Water for Elephants was challenged by parents in Utah in like 3 different districts or something.
We're still not sure why.
Which, you know, okay, fine if you feel that strongly about it, but pressure groups?
Yeah, I know. What the hell is that?
What does that have to do with like anything?
Because that's like the only pressure group that I can think of for a school is the PTA or something,
yeah,
you know?
Probably like religious
I would
or
assume.
something.
I would assume
you know?
it's more along that front, yeah.
But, you know, then it kind of opens up a whole other, you know, can of worms of like who's in these pressure groups and what's their motivation.
Correct.
For 4,000 titles.
Well, I would just like to understand why you have so much time on your hands.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine people having time to do this. That's crazy. That would be like you could employ people full time simply to find these titles that you would like to challenge. I'm sure most of which, like, a lot of these folks have never heard of before.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we look at the ones that were challenged, like the top 10 most challenged books of 2024, I think you have a bit more background on these, Megan.
So the ALA obviously had noted that most of the, basically largely as expected, the books that were most challenged in 2024, most of them incorporated some form of LGBTQ plus characters or themes.
Yeah.
And they obviously also very much touched on topics of race, like racism or racial prejudice, equity, and social justice. Those were big ones. So if we take a look through top 10, this one popped up on every single list that I saw forever. All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, which was published in 2020, actually, so recently, which is his YA like manifesto or a memoir essentially about the trials and triumphs of Black queer boys specifically. So again, the LGBTQ plus sort of themes, which will be very heavy in something like that as well. Gender Queer by Maya Kababi. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, which is a graphic novel actually.
Oh, really?
Yes, but is used as a memoir. It's a coming of age, not like story essentially about a teen coming out as non-binary and asexual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because those are the most dangerous people out there.
It is. Yeah, no, it is.
I can't, Megan. I
just
can't.
I know.
Just fucking leave people to be whoever they want to be, and just, they're not bothering you.
If they're not murdering anyone, I really don't see what the problem is.
You know, like, can't even, you tell me statistically 100% of asexual people are serial killers. Like, that's not true.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, that's not true.
That's not a thing. Or what, non-binary folk are more likely to commit violent crimes? I guarantee that's not true.
Yep.
Number 3 and 4, I think, are tied for the number of times that they were challenged. So there's The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, which was published in 1970. So, like, why are we still doing that?
We're still mad about this.
Yes, it's about an 11-year-old Black girl who prays for her eyes to turn blue. And there's, like, a lot of themes of racism and everything, which obviously Toni Morrison is incredibly well known for that as well. That's something that she wrote about a ton.
Yeah.
Number 4 is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, which is another coming of age. A lot of them are YA titles because they're challenged in schools and stuff. So which is another YA novel about like a high school freshman, and touches on themes of suicide, as far as I recall, if I'm not mistaken, throughout the course of the story. Number 5, which is Tricks by Ellen Hopkins, which is actually one I've never heard of before.
No,
it's a YA novel. It's written in verse, and it follows the lives of 5 troubled teens, essentially.
Okay.
Who, go through various different things. It's number 6 and 7 are also tied with one another. Number 6 is Looking for Alaska by John Green, which was published in 2005. It's also a YA novel about a high school boy who has a crush on a girl named Alaska, and he goes searching for answers after, unfortunately, she dies in a car accident. He goes searching for answers about her and her life and how she got to this point, essentially, that she did, because she was dealing with a lot of different struggles.
Okay, so car accidents are bad? Is that what we're saying?
Oh,
we
yeah,
can't talk about them.
They touch on a lot of themes of sexuality, suicidal thoughts, and things like that, and a lot of like different like issues that teenagers deal with on a regular basis.
Right.
I don't know exactly everything about it, but I do know that from what I remember, is Looking for Alaska is actually quite a tragic John Green story. I mean, I know John Green really tugs at your heartstrings.
All of his stories are sad.
Yeah, like a lot of his stuff is pretty intense that way, but that one's quite up there as well. So Looking for Alaska is tied with Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews, which was published in 2012. It's a novel about a teen who has no choice but to rekindle a childhood friendship with a girl who's dying of cancer currently. So,
and cancer is censorable.
Oh
no, we can't talk about cancer.
Yeah, okay. Number 8 and 9, yet again, are tied for a number of times that they've been challenged. Crank by Ellen Hopkins. I remember seeing this everywhere in bookstores when I was a teenager. It was published in 2004.
I think there's a number of them in the series, isn't there?
I think so, but I remember Crank. It was one of those like Go Ask Alice.
Yeah.
That was published around that time.
Yeah.
And it's about a girl, unfortunately, who deals with an addiction to crystal meth.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like a big struggle with like drug addiction. Let's see, it's tied with a novel called Sold by Patricia McCormick, which was published in 2006, which is a YA novel about a teen from Nepal who's sold into sexual slavery in India.
Wow.
So, yikes, that sounds horrific. Just in general, that would be like, it's an important story to tell, but man, that must be a rough read.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, number 10 is called Flamer by Mike Curato, also published in 2020. Graphic novel about a boy's journey into self-discovery and acceptance.
You know, like, as I listened to what these are all about, and, you know, we knew about this, these titles from 2024, they're not the same as, like, you know, other years or other titles that are typically on these banned book lists, which include things like 1984, The Handmaid's Tale, The Hunger Games, you know, books about like uprising and like rebellion against and like fighting against government. Yeah. These are all stories about identity and lived experience
and identity,
and like
self-acceptance.
And like, you know, okay, I understand as a parent wanting to protect your child from learning about the horrors of the world and you want to wrap them up in, you know, bubble wrap and whatnot.
Sure. You know that very well right now.
Of
You're
course.
a new mom. So.
But like, you can't do that because the world is going to come for your child and your child is going to feel what they feel. And, you know, even if you lock them up and wrap them up in bubble wrap, they will feel however they feel. And so why not let them read stories and develop empathy and understanding and like, you know, you don't want them to read about drug addiction and meth because what, you're afraid that they're going to become drug addicted, but surely the best way of avoiding becoming drug addicted is to read about how difficult it is.
How bad it is. Yeah, I agree.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think
like
you're right.
The logic is not logicking.
It doesn't. And you know, we talked about this in our first discussion about this. It's not preventing anything. In spite of what people think, it's not preventing anything. I do have a couple of little just tidbits for you on the Canadian side of things, because we're not just here to shit all over the administration in the US, obviously, and like what's going on with like banning and all that crap over there.
Well, this was from 2024. This was before this Gong show started. That's
true. So apparently, basically, what's happening in Canada at the moment, there are reports that there's an upswing a little bit about like book bans in Canada more recently. And again, the majority of the challenges have to do with sexuality, LGBTQ plus themes, and gender diversity are like largely what's happening. What did they say? But also, it's funny because what are they saying? Yeah, okay, the Canadian Library Challenges Database is an initiative specifically by the Toronto Metropolitan University's Center for Free Expression. Okay. So TMU is a big school here in the called
Ryerson.
Ryerson, yeah, that's it, and it was renamed. So they have a particular initiative. They listed 119 titles were challenged in 2024, and so far another 30 for 2025.
Oh, wow.
But this was from April of this year, so it's possible that there have been more titles added to the list since then. Yeah, that's it. A lot of the complaints were that books were age inappropriate, they contained explicit content, or they were pro-LGBTQ+.
God, I hate it here.
Yeah.
We're in the bad place, Megan.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, this is the bad place.
This is the bad place.
Look, we did the thing. Anyway, yeah. But at the same time, it's very funny because according to data from BookNet Canada, LGBTQ plus fiction sales in Canada has increased, or it did increase, I just did say, in the final quarter of 2024 by 34%.
Yeah, because they banned it, so people were like, hey, I wonder what that is.
And also it's like we're lucky enough now that there are so many writers out there who are able to have their works published, works that deal with these themes of gender identity and expression and self-discovery that, you know, maybe a certain number of years ago they wouldn't have been able to have published, and now we're able to do that. And people want those stories. Like, it kind of goes to show that people are looking for them. They're actively seeking them out.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is, like, I think I mentioned this, you know, whenever I walk into, like, a bookstore or a library or, you know, even in the States when we've gone, which we don't do right now, but, you know, you walk in and there's oftentimes, like, a display with banned books.
Yeah.
Like, Barnes & Noble has a whole part of their website dedicated to banned books, so you can go and check them out. And according to the ALA, almost half of public libraries currently offer like these types of displays.
Right, yeah.
Which is an increase of almost 15% since 2020.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
So
enough.
Yeah, it's crazy, you know, like it's almost like the more, you know, again, the more we're seeing the environment change and dialogue change and attitudes change, the more, you know, libraries and bookstores are working to continue that education.
To continue to allow people freedom of expression and to choose exactly the content that they would like to consume.
Yep.
So at least it's nice to see that on the library front.
Well, and we also thank the publishers for continuing to publish these stories, right?
Because it does show that there's a demand.
There is, and you know, if the publishers stop publishing them, then we know that we're really in the bad place.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's it. When you start to see that happen, that's when things become very concerning. So I'm happy to see that in many different places in the world, these stories continue to be not only published, but also lauded and praised by critics and by readers and the public. And there is a proper demand in place for these things, and people are excited to have access to these stories, and perhaps certain people are also happy to find relatability within their literature in a way that they could not before.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, representation matters.
It does. Yeah, it does. Absolutely. So anyway, I, for one, hope that in spite of all these challenges that, and, you know, things that occur, that most folks are just kind of the mindset that, like, if they're uncomfortable with a particular topic or whatever it is, then you yourself can choose not to read it, not to consume that content. That is freedom of expression. That is, like, freedom of choice.
Yeah.
That is your decision, and I think that's wonderful, and we should all continue to do that.
Agree.
And if you choose to consume certain content, you also have access to it. And as long as we're not talking about people being murdered on camera, you know, I don't really think we're going to do too much harm as a rule.
I hope not.
Yeah. Anyway, that was a little bit of a ranty kind of one that we just did.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah.
Rant.
Soapbox. Anyway, but we'll come back at you next week with another adaptation we're going to be touching on.
God.
Yeah. It's going to be I'm not going to give it away, but we're going to be
a lot of wine was consumed.
So much because I forgot how boring it was. Anyway, and so, you know, again begs my question. I guess this one makes more sense in terms of being banned, quote unquote. But, Lord, I have to question what the point of that was. Anyway, we're going to be coming at you with that next week. But in the meantime, obviously, as usual, feel free to check out everything we have going on over on the website at fullybooked.ca. Follow our social media, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky. Search for Fully Booked CA and you will find us there. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.